Oh. That was very Blues Brothers.
Yeah.
Like, synchronized glass putting on. Wait, let's do it again.
Hold on. Finish. Parking brake. Put the parking brake.
Did your wife drive it?
She drove it earlier today.
There we go.
All right. Good. You ready to roll?
Yeah, let's roll.
Alrighty.
Welcome to the storm edition of On the Road.
The not Storm Chaser edition.
I kind of wish I was out storm chasing today. Actually, I've been looking, but yeah, the weather's been really good, and I've been just life is preventing me from going out and doing what I want to do, which it's the way life is. I had to get Adrienne yesterday. Well, in theory, I was supposed to get her on Friday night at 8 p.m. and her flight got completely foobarred by the storms that went through Dallas, and then American had some fun and like 14 more mistakes on their part it's a weather delay. The plane broken down, the plane not being able to be moved from the terminal. You're still going to fly tonight until 1 a.m. Oh, you're not going to fly tonight. When I could have driven to Dallas and gotten her and been home before they made the decision. Anyways, we had to go get our bags yesterday, and I was driving on the road, and the weather, it's like, the skies are incredible.
Did you see a plane in San Antonio fell off the runway and got into a muddy ditch, and they're having trouble pulling it out?
I can believe that.
Yeah.
I mean, planes always worry me because the wheels are like on the end of a stick, and I know they're hugely strong, but like I can't imagine like pulling on it with the whole airplane trying to get it out of the ditch. Like jack it up and then move it and then set it back down.
Yeah, it seems like it's a much bigger problem than you think it would be at first blush.
I think it's a pretty huge problem at first blush.
Yeah. What happens when the stick breaks and it lands on the bottom? Then you got to repair the whole plane. Yeah.
No, you tow the plane. You rip that landing gear off. It's done.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure they don't put those back in service anymore.
Yeah.
Which I don't know what a 737 costs these days, but it's not a call you want to make to your insurance company.
More than a Kia?
More than a Kia.
Okay.
Interesting weight measurements I saw recently. The guy who does PBS Space Time was giving a Nerd Night talk about the possibility of intergalactic civilization. And he was like, here's the energy consumption to do, assuming Einstein was right, which we all pretty much do at this point. Here's the energy needed to accelerate a Kia. But he didn't do a Kia, he did a Prius to 99.999% of the speed of light. It's like the space shuttle, which is not really an intergalactic spaceship yet, weighs like 500 Priuses. I don't remember what it was. It was some like huge number, which is kind of impressive when you think that we, blasted into orbit.
Since the 80s.
Since the 80s, yeah. Yeah, things we could do in the 80s that we can't do now.
Falcon just landed their 11th reusable rocket.
With a launch of a reused capsule. So Adrienne had never seen one of their landings, and she was half unconscious last night, jet lag from China, and the fact she didn't sleep for 48 hours because of
travel,
long flight, and American. So I made her watch one, and she was like, it was cloudy during the landing, so you couldn't see it till the last second, and she was like, whoa! It's like, yeah, it's kind of like a skyscraper falling out of the sky, and then just sitting down, it just goes, whoop.
Yeah, it's
deeply impressive.
We may not be doing exactly the same things we did with the space shuttle, but we're starting a whole nother generation of potential for space travel.
Well, it's really exciting to see the private sector space travel stuff taking off. The government funded science, not just space, government-funded science has a huge role to play in the U.S., and it has always had. It's a lot of why our economy is where it is today, on the plus side. But routine hops to orbit are not really the thing that the government is ever going to be great at. That's not science anymore. Now it's a logistical task, right? We're managing a bus service.
Yeah.
So. And they did it because there's no other way to put, Hubble and International Space Station and
Skylab,
all the communication satellite, all that stuff that needed to be done. There was not really a good way to do. So It's good. I mean, like Blue Origin's been doing tests and they've been good. And I saw that I want to say Virgin Atlantic, but that's not what I'm thinking of.
What is it?
The guy who's doing the airplane to launch it. They just released photos of their new launch. They had a crash during one of the test flights.
Not Ballmer, but the other guy.
Yeah, just
Paul Allen.
Paul Allen. That's it. I forget what his venture is called. They showed his launch plane. It's basically two jumbo jets stuck together with a wing between them, which is kind of.
Yeah, I saw that. That's exactly what it looked like.
I mean, SpaceX has kind of gone old school. Like, it's a rocket. It's a really advanced rocket, but it's just a stick with a big motor at the bottom, right? And it works really well, and they've got a cool landing system, and, like, the reusability is huge. But I feel like he's actually doing something innovative I mean, SpaceX is doing a ton of innovative stuff. I don't mean that to sound negative, but his is visually innovative. Like, it's totally different.
Yeah. I mean, are they just taking it to like super high orbit and then launching from there?
Yeah, he just built a super composite, he basically had one of his experimental aircraft, married them together with a bunch of engines. And his spacecraft is not. So, it's been a while since I spent time looking at details of this stuff, but SpaceX is very much going after what NASA used to do. Ferrying astronauts to the space station, launching heavy payloads, that type of work, and that's what Blue Origin is too, with the extension of being like, we want to go to the moon, we want to go to Mars, we want to have a spacecraft commercially that can do those things so that we can mine an asteroid, and we can pull helium-3 from the moon so that we can have fusion power, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, it's not pretty weather right now. And his Paul Allen's thing seems to be much more like he's doing a lifting body aircraft. It can do orbit, but not really orbit. Like it can't get, if I remember right, like it's not really set up to get, but it's much more efficient for like low orbital hops.
Okay.
And I think there may be some provision in the design to add a booster or something to get to like ISS orbit kind of thing. But like that's the outside of their envelope if I've understood what they're doing right. Whereas like SpaceX, like the Falcon 9 is the small rocket. Right. They have the big rocket that's 3 of them strapped together, and then they have plans for like that god awful thing with like 20 engines or whatever in it.
Falcon Heavy or whatever.
Yeah. So it's really interesting. So how does that pertain to photography? I have no idea, but we watched that landing last night. I've tried to catch them live when I can. Because frankly, the failures, which they haven't had since early on, are really interesting to watch also.
The NASCAR viewer.
Yeah, I mean, a skyscraper falling out of the sky, almost landing and then falling over and exploding is,
Yeah, then you're like, oh, that's why they do water landings. Okay.
Yeah, that's why they started off in the water and not Cape Canaveral. I mean, this last one was in Cape Canaveral, and the interesting thing about that is, I mean, this thing's coming from, it's not in orbit, but it's coming from 100 kilometers up or whatever, it's coming from an altitude that would be considered space. And it's just falling with its own navigation. And from that altitude, it could hit anything it wanted to in pretty much the eastern United States, I'm pretty sure. Like, if it twisted its fins, it could fly over and hit, Atlanta. Maybe not. Maybe that's too far over to hit.
But it's a big radius.
It's a big radius. They could certainly not hit the launch pad and hit something else near Cape Canaveral.
Yeah.
Which just shows the confidence that they have, and the fact that even their failures have been really, really close.
Yeah.
That's the really interesting thing, is that like they've had failures that have been, like their first couple of attempts didn't make it, unsurprisingly, but almost there. Like that was impressive. Like the fact they were able to hit the barge with a falling rocket, I guess shouldn't be surprising since they can fly a missile into an air conditioning duct, but
still, I mean, it's one of those things though, it's probably good that they failed early. I think the earlier you fail and then learn from it, the better.
Yeah, that's well, the key is to learn from it, right? One of the worries I had when the whole private space thing started was that the staying power wouldn't be there. And I thought, the U.S. government staying power, but then, I think what NASA's history, unfortunately, has been, one of, as soon as the political attention span goes away, funding goes away, right? So Apollo, they say, well, there's nothing else we can do on the moon, and they cancel the program early. And I mean, I don't know if with the Apollo missions there's anything else we could have done, but there was certainly more we can do with the moon. And they didn't have that in their plan anyways. So, he seems to, Musk seems to have the budget to stick it out. And I think the fact they had some early successes launching satellites, now they've got income.
Yeah.
I think they have some cash flow, which is probably important.
Well, I think it's interesting who's doing it as well. You have these titans of industry, and that's sort of like, oh, that's going to be our next big market. Like both Musk and Bezos, right? Like two pretty visionary people.
Right, we're watching what happens in, my mind just went blank on his name. Sci-fi author wrote a bunch of like the Grand Tour series, like the story of industrialized space exploration beginning, like colonizing the moon and all that. And it's amazing how close the pattern we're seeing right now is to what he was writing about in like the 80s and the 90s.
Yeah.
I mean, without some of the fictional drama, but my mind just went completely blank. It starts with a B, and I can't remember the rest of it. Bimbova, that's it.
I think the other thing too, we talk about technology and obsolescence, and we had that conversation with Ray on Friday.
Yep.
About how quick things have changed in, like, let's say the last 20 years as a timeline. We went from, phones in the house, car phone, cell phone, smartphone, and then smartphone, and then just exploded with iterations. We look at flight, Kitty Hawk, propeller flight, jet flight, space flight. Now it's like...
we look... Yes, but I think we've also plateaued in a way there.
No, it was space flight, but I'm just saying...
phones too. We'll see what comes next.
Of what the phone does, but not what the phone allows. So then if you look at, like, the phone powering Uber, for instance.
Yeah. Things that utilize the phone are still coming along, but I don't see...
Google Maps. Those things that literally didn't exist 10 years ago.
And I think leveraging the phone will change, but like if you talk about in terms of I guess the underlying technology is still those things, but if you look at the phone itself, it's hard to know. Like, I can envision an era when we would have phones like this, when we only had a flip phone that did nothing, right? Like, that was possible. And clearly people envisioned cell phones in the 60s. They were called tricorders.
Yeah.
Right? So, like, I have trouble envisioning and seeing other people envision what could come next. Embedded technologies in humans is a possibility. I don't even consider that
well, like growing up,
extension of a phone.
We always joked, where are flying cars? And that was kind of a joke. And I don't want flying cars. I think it's a terrible idea.
It's a terrible idea.
But I never thought about I didn't think about self-driving cars as a reality that I would see in my lifetime. I just didn't think about it. I didn't think one way or another. It was just an absence of thought. I didn't think anything of it. You see it in movies sometimes. You're like, that's funny. Okay, cool. And now it's like,
I
have a 6-year-old and 3-year-old, and I wonder if they'll ever have a driver's license. It's coming. It went from like, oh, that'd be an interesting sci-fi thought, to like, yeah, they're working on it, to like, no, it's ready.
Yeah, well, self-driving cars end up kind of being like cars to people who love horses. Not that you can't love a horse, but like people who horses were the only thing they thought of. Oh, cars, whatever, it's a fad.
Yeah.
And then suddenly, like, no one uses a horse for transport anymore unless you're doing something not, in the backcountry.
So I was trying to bring in Ray's conversation. We chatted with a guy who has old Hasselblad equipment and was, wanting to start venturing more into the digital world. And just how he was telling the stories of how close that technology would change, and businesses came and go based on the introduction of new technologies. And I wonder about photographers who rely on, one certain aspect, who don't learn like underlying principles, and then as soon as technology changes and they don't have a business anymore, no, go up here, it's easier.
Okay. Oh yeah, this is the one that screws you. Toll. They make the signs really confusing. The thing that came up there, right, was what killed the photography industry, or what killed what people thought of as the photography industry.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that you no longer needed to hire a technician. Well, that guy just likes both lanes.
Mm-hmm.
You no longer needed to hire a technician to operate a camera, which means that a lot of the photography industry was technicians operating cameras, where they weren't being hired for any type of vision or artistic input or anything else. Because at that point, an art director had come along and given them, here's what we're shooting, here's the layout, here's our blocking. I need you to shoot it. Okay, I'll shoot that. No big deal. Those jobs don't exist anymore because the barrier to operate the camera is essentially zero now. If you can operate a computer, you can figure out how to run a camera competently.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean you can bring anything else to the equation, which is where people talk about, well, you look at the successful people still in the industry, and they talk about what you bring to the table, and you're an advertising partner, you're a logistical partner.
I mean, you are the art director in some senses, right?
I mean, our business,
that
we don't operate with customers who are using a big enough budget to hire, an ad company that has an entire team. So they are their own team. So anything we bring in is right, might be the difference between them being able to afford this to do the kind of photography we do and not. I was gonna say the skies look amazing. Anyways, so here's a segue. It's raining. I've been looking at underwater housings. I mean, you know that because I've been annoying you over.
I've also been looking at underwater housings for quite some time.
Yeah. Something I've always not since.
But no, but it's not. It's kind of an interesting segue though, right? What's interesting about that is most people don't take photos underwater because it's really hard to do.
Yeah, and there's a lot of. So we always joke when I worked at the dive shop in Houston. People would come in, I bought a good camera. I went at housing, and you would get that kind of chuckle, and they would go, "What?" I'm like, "You have bought the inexpensive part of this arrangement, right? Like the camera body and the lens, in the best case, cost about what the housing is going to cost, and frequently the housing costs twice or three times as much as the camera."
Yeah.
So I'm a cave and technical diver. I haven't done it in a while, and I'm trying to get back into that also. Just life wasn't really allowing me the time and resources to, make multi-day trips to Florida to go cave diving. So there's a lot of skills that you have to be a diver to be an underwater photographer. Well, you can be a snorkeler, but to do the kind of photography I want to do, you have to be a diver, and not just any diver. You have to be good enough at the physical skills to be able to put yourself where you want to be and hold yourself there and monitor all of your scuba diving stuff, depth and your air consumption and your decompression schedule and all that. And then you also have to be a photographer. For some reason that sounds fun to me. I don't know. I mean, I started out taking underwater photos on a film camera that I shot for a little while, and then didn't put it down because film was getting really hard to deal with at that point. I've missed it ever since, so hopefully the end of this year. So technology changing though, so I'm looking at there are a number of brands, and there's a number of good brands, but the brand we're looking at is Icolite, and they're the bargain brand, not because their stuff's not good, but theirs are made out of injection molded acrylic, which is a lot cheaper to produce than the ones that are cast aluminum or milled aluminum. Those have some advantages over the Icolite in terms of depth and in terms of volume and all that, but they've just changed their lens port mounts to support bigger lenses, and they don't offer one for my camera yet. So now I'm debating whether I want to hold out for one or buy one.
Well, is that going to be their platform going forward?
It is. They're switching all over to that dry mount.
Yeah, so
it solves a technical problem, but they're still going to. The thing with that underwater housing is it's not like a regular camera system. You don't keep upgrading it. I mean, you kind of buy what you need, and then.
I just mean for in terms of accessories and are they going to have the same mounts? And
the ports are the same. The port to extension tube is the same. So the port will switch over.
Okay.
Which is $1,000 for the big wide-angle dome port. So it's not nothing. Or $700 for the big wide-angle dome port, which is what I need. So yeah, that'll switch over. The extensions won't. They're not that expensive. And the camera housing won't, but the camera housing is a one-off. Right?
Yeah.
It works for one camera. So unless Nikon happens to maintain the button layout on the D810 when they release the D820 or whatever they call it. If they do that, then yeah, I mean it's possible that you could upgrade the camera in the same housing. I mean the 5D3, 5D4, 5DS all use the same layout, so they all use the same housing. The clouds look amazing. I
can't really see them on your side. I can't see them.
It's just all that up there.
No, yeah.
Anyway, so we'll see. Luckily, I don't have money in the account right now, so there's not a possibility. So I guess the day I get enough, my balance in that account goes to that point, I'll have to think real hard. I'll probably just pull the trigger on whatever they have, because if my life has taught me anything, it's that getting something in my hands earlier is much more beneficial than holding out for the ideal.
Right.
I don't know if that's just me or what, but I mean the new housing gives two things. That new dry fit, it changes the way the seal on the port, so when you change lenses, you don't have to worry about getting water in the housing because it moves the O-ring to the outside instead of the inside.
Yep.
But it supports bigger lenses, so I could finally use my 14 to 24 in a Nicolite housing.
That might be what I mean. That's a pretty big.
It is, and a 14 is a really good lens for underwater for the kind of things I want to shoot. But it's not the only lens, so I don't know. This is the dilemma. Luckily, I don't have to make a decision today, or
it's all theoretical at this point.
Yeah, it's very theoretical until I have a pile of cash sitting around, which photographer.
Right. So does anybody else shoot underwater? Is anybody else? I know Emily's out there. She just shot a whole bunch with one of the little Olympus Tufts.
What, a GoPro?
And GoPro. Oh, that's new.
I shot a bunch with an Olympus Tuft. We had one, went to New Zealand with it. I'll tell you what, they weren't lying when they called it tough. That camera, it got flooded with salt water at one point, and it still works. I let it dry out, and it kept working. Unfortunately, it didn't shoot raw, which was kind of the deal killer once I learned what I was doing.
Yeah.
I actually have the underwater housing, so the one that I had, probably 10 years ago. No, more than 12 or 13 years ago. It was good at 30 feet. Which then was a big deal. Now we have cell phones and everything else that does that. So the answer, you ask if people shoot underwater, I think the answer is going to be yes. I think a lot of people shoot underwater.
I want to see them share them with us. Let's see your best underwater shot.
Yeah, I want to see it, but I'm just saying, I think it's going to be a much bigger crowd than it would have been 5 years ago.
Well, to me, it's kind of the flip. But the flip of what's happening with Astro as well. As cameras, sensors have gotten better.
Everybody can do Astro now. You don't have to have a D3S anymore.
Or a film camera for an hour exposure or whatever you want to do.
Yep.
I think you've seen that proliferation of Astro as...
I'm using it. I'm teaching classes in Astro because lots of people want to know it.
Yeah, absolutely. But you're seeing those niches that at one point were very, very specialized and are slowly becoming more diffuse into the abilities of mini.
Yeah, the equipment is starting to become available, which is, step one in it becoming... I'm going to do some vibration reduction here with my finger.
I find all that, to me, I find all that interesting and encouraging, because I think it raises the bar, right? A photo of the stars 15 years ago was like, wow, that's amazing. How'd you get the stars?
The first time I saw one, which was probably about 2010 was when I first started being aware of them. There were very few people shooting them. And they were good, don't get me wrong, but the bar was so low. The first time I shot a star picture, people lost their mind. And now we see them all the time.
Right. And so, but what's interesting to me is, because more people can do it, you have to get better at them to stand out even more. People ask me a lot, oh, don't you hate... I got asked last night as I was shooting a wedding, doesn't it bother you with all these people on the cell phones? I'm like, no. But I like it. They're like, how? Why do you like it? It's like, because then when I show them what I can do, they don't...
They appreciate it because they've tried.
They appreciate it, or they don't even understand how we do what we do, because they're taking snapshots and we're crafting images. It's not even the same thing, and so they see how hard it is now.
Ray kind of brought that up too, because he was talking about. He asked, well, how do you feel about all this competition and this and the y'all do the photo club? Aren't you worried about I know a lot of professionals who wouldn't take part in stuff like that? And what was my answer? No,
That's
I'm not insecure about other people competing with me. And if you get better than me, great. I'm glad. I'll chase you for change. That's nice to have somebody to chase, right?
Yeah. I think talking about your technician division, it used to be the photographers hoarded these dark secrets because their goal to profit was knowing a lever to move or a chemical process that somebody else
knowing
didn't
the
know.
secret recipe to set the lighting up a certain way.
Yeah.
It was a recipe, and as soon as the recipe got out, it was trivial.
Right. And so, now to me, it's much more, what vision do you have? What do you want to accomplish? I think that is a bigger skill than knowing the perfect settings to be at. I mean, there aren't perfect settings to be at, but having that vision and having that art director feel to it and be like, no, I want this to communicate that. I want X to show Y.
Well,
that to me is, you can refine that skill, but it's not the same as learning how to develop film.
I can take anybody and give them a way to meter and set the camera, right? Like that's what a light meter is. It's a automaton that looks at a light meter and sets your settings. That's what auto modes are. And if I can, if you can teach an 8-bit microcontroller inside a camera to do it, you can certainly teach a human.
Mm-hmm.
So that clearly isn't a deciding. Navigating. Like that's never going to be a deciding factor again. I mean, that's not being a deciding factor in like displacement of people in manufacturing, right? The lamenting robots displacing people. Well, you know what? If the displacement is jarring, and you have to do something to replace those people into new places, and that happens despite what the world thinks. But that automation is faster, and it's displaced them for a reason. It does a more consistent job. So a lot of the technical stuff, there are times, the rules always use manual. I use manual a lot for very, very specific reasons, but as soon as the automatic system can do what I want to do, I'm going to use the automatic system because that offloads that mental overhead.
Yeah.
It lets me concentrate more on posing. The Platon episode in Abstract, right? He talks about why he shoots film because of the pace it causes and all that. And one of the takeaways there was he's not fiddling with the cameras. He's using a single lighting setup with a single setting, so he doesn't have to think about settings at all, right? So in a way, it's kind of like a super simplified version of automatic, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's automatic. You don't have to worry about it. That's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
And in a lot of ways, the automation on the cameras is the same way, right? You stop having to be a technician, which frees your resources, right? If you're a society, if that's the way the metaphor works, suddenly you have a whole set of mental people that aren't having to worry about what's the exposure right now and what's this and what's that. If you go around, there's a garage over there. Yeah. So I mean, that's powerful when it works. You just it's a matter of knowing when it works and when it doesn't.
Where?
You can go to the garage, I think, or we can park here on the street.
I just parked on the street.
That's fine. There's the door's over there, though. Sorry, this is not the door we're going in. I'll tell you that. Hey, so we're at our shoot location. Anyways, that's enough. That's enough of me droning on. So off to do a bridal. Oh, it's a one-way. Hey, off to do a bridal shoot.
Fun times in rainy downtown Austin.
Yeah, rainy downtown Austin. Maybe we'll get to use the skies if we get done with this and the bride is brave enough and it's not pouring rain. So.